Less than a mile away from the Tower of the Americas, in the heart of San Antonio, a shipping container that's only 40 feet long is growing the equivalent of 800 heads of lettuce a week. Now, it can be tempting a lot of the time when we think about local farming and local farming problems to want to go back to the past. We really want to know just a couple farmers here and there. We want to eat totally seasonally, and we want to get our milkman to come every other day. But we don't live in the same cities that we used to. In fact, the cities that we live in now are totally different. The land that used to surround the cities that we relied on are way more expensive than they've ever been before. If farmers want to open up a farm, then they have to expend huge amounts of resources to try to pick one up. And if they already own the land, it can become extremely tempting to want to sell off as fast as possible. The soil that's here is oftentimes heavily polluted by cadmium, lead. A lot of the gardens that we want to have producing locally can even be hazardous to our health. And the climate is changing. So seasons aren't as reliable as they used to be. If we really want agriculture to work scalably, we're going to have to think about something new. There is always going to be a part for community gardens, farmers markets. The dirt smells too good and it's too great to talk to somebody who's making your food. But if we really want to scale up to resolve the problems that we have, to make ourselves more insulated from climate change, to make sure that droughts that are likely to happen don't hit us as hard as they seem to be apparent to, then we really need a new solution. But we're not the first city to have to come up with urban agricultural solutions. Havana, another Latin American city not too far away from here, produces 80% of its own food. And it does it because after the Cuban embargo passed, they had to produce lots of that food because they couldn't have access to the global cheap food infrastructure that most of the rest of us have the privilege of having access to. And they do it with just the tractors that they had previously bought. They're still running the ones off of that they got in 1960. Another city in the 1800s, Paris, exported more food than they imported. And that's Paris, not France. They did it because they took advantage of what resources they had available. They had some of the best glass blowers in the world, and they made tiny domes that they would put around plants to trick the plants into thinking that the season was a different one than they were already expecting. They also had lots and lots of horses because there was no cars around. And with lots of horses comes lots of horse poop. Turns out that that actually is an amazing fertilizer, but it also helps warm the soil to make way more seasons and give access to plants that they ordinarily wouldn't be able to grow at all. Now, San Antonio has a lot of resources available. We have huge swaths of land that are as cheap as you can find in a large city. We have cheap electricity because we're producing natural gas not too far away. We have an amazing budding culinary scene that really wants fresh, distinct, interesting produce. And we have technology that comes along with big companies like Rackspace and networks like Geekdom. The technology that I think potentially has the best chance of being able to integrate into cities is hydroponics. Now, these are examples of the hydroponic columns that we use at our farm just in downtown San Antonio. But there's a bunch of different contexts or ways to grow. The best part about it is that we don't use any pesticides, we use no herbicides, and we use less than 1% of conventional farming's agricultural use. That's even organic dirt farming. They use lots of water compared to us. All of our water is recirculated back, and the water that's transpired out gets caught by our air conditioning and gets put back into our system. Now, large agriculture can only work effectively if we think at scalable, distinct ways. If we have large amounts of hydroponics dispersed around San Antonio, as opposed to in centralized locations, then we potentially could make a large dent in how much food is being produced and how much food is being consumed. Hydroponics is not new. There are places all around the country that are producing hydroponics on the top of supermarkets, and in Singapore and Japan, huge multiple-story buildings are being erected that are producing crops hydroponically. In Marfa, one of the largest farms in the world, hydroponic farms, is producing tomatoes, and they do it because they have really cheap evaporative cooling in such a dry environment. But we have something different. We have lots of land, and we have a lot of people who are willing to work it. Just on the east side of San Antonio alone, almost a quarter of the lots are either abandoned or empty. Now that's the space for 8 million tomato plants, 10 million jalapenos, or 30 million cilantro plants, and I'm just picking those crops off the top of my head. Now, it's possible to not be on location to grow these plants. Our farm allows us to look on our phones to check our monitoring solution, to make sure that our plants are growing as ideally as possible. And if we integrate and scale up these types of technologies, then we can spread them all across into abandoned warehouses, empty lots. And we can start to do things besides just change food solutions. We can start to make the city better in other ways too. We can start to bring new talent into the city, like Sam, who just moved down from Baltimore. He came down to manage our first distributed location at the food bank. And we're getting new talent with these interesting opportunities. The resources that we have in San Antonio are appealing to other people coming all across the country. We also have the opportunity to make our space not just a concrete, hostile environment that we're trying to maximize the price on. We can integrate the things that we want to eat to soften those landscapes and make them more appealing for the people who are living inside them. If we can make agriculture work in this way, then we can make it responsive to the people who want customized, out-of-season goods. We can grow interesting things for restaurants that want something totally new. If you were running a Vietnamese restaurant and need some weird Vietnamese mint, we can do that. You can grow anything, anywhere. Why wouldn't you? If you can end up putting all of this agriculturally productive space into use, then you can start to actually change the scale of the problems that we're facing. Bees would no longer get pesticide washing out from the San Antonio River. We'd be more insulated from drought and climate change in general. Why not? Let's grow together.